Hey guys, welcome to another movie review. Today I'm going to be talking about a very, very bad movie that Bill Cosby acted in 1990. This film, maybe not like the absolute worst film of all time, according to many, but it's definitely a film where when people talk about like bad movies, just like films that are really like inexcusably bad, this film it's definitely brought up a lot. Like I said, it's not probably considered like the worst film just because there definitely is worse films than this movie, but the fact that it did manage to get as bad as it did is pretty much why I'm reviewing it for you today and why many would consider this movie to be one of Bill Cosby's worst and possibly one of the worst in the comedy genre in general. So overall, guys, in Ghost Dad, it follows a workaholic father who Bill Cosby plays in the movie. He works for this business where it's very tight deadlines. They always need him to do stuff. He barely has time for a lunch break and so forth. But one day, while he's about to do a business meeting in a different building somewhere, the taxi cab driver that he has on the way over to this place is completely insane. He's lost his mind. He thinks that almost everybody works for the devil, and he's kind of the few people left that believe in God and so forth. So Bill Cosby's in this cab with him. He's trying to basically get out of this cab, and through a series of events, basically both the cab driver and Bill Cosby are presumed dead after the cab falls into this river after this. This big wide distance between the bridge and the river. It falls into the river, and so obviously, they're both presumed dead. So Bill Cosby miraculously is walking near this bridge again. He's walked up from the river all the way up this mountain, and he thinks he's still alive. But obviously, when cars pass through him and people can't see him and so forth, he does find out he is a ghost. But he's able to interact with his children. He's able to interact with co-workers at this business that he works at. Nobody has any clue that he's dead, basically. So he basically becomes this ghost dad, as this title of the movie is suggesting. And so, obviously things are still really bad at this business. His boss is putting him back to work. His children at home kind of view this as this opportunity to basically let their father be the father of this family for good, since this father is widowed, the mother has passed away a long time ago. So basically, the family is trying to view this as an opportunity for him to finally be this father that he's never had the time to do, while the business is obviously, still being the business and wants him to still make these deadlines and do all these meetings and so forth. So Ghost Dad is ultimately about, how can this guy just kind of rest in peace for once, be this ghost, be this father that he's always wanted to be, while everybody else still wants him to be that businessman that he was back when he was alive. So overall, guys, Ghost Dad is a horrible movie. As you'll see here in a minute, I have very few positive things to say about it, if anything. This is more so not even a review. This is more so a rant of why Ghost Dad is really horrible. And though it's probably not the worst film I've ever seen, it's easily one of the worst films I've ever seen. Probably in my top 20 somewhere for worst films I've ever had to watch. So for positives, you guys, if I really had to be nice with Ghost Dad, I would say the first 10 minutes of this film are pretty normal. They're pretty standard movie issue, opening credits, uh, standard setup of a movie, I guess. So I guess the first 10 minutes feel kind of normal. They feel like a film that could have possibly been good to a certain extent. Unfortunately, that is definitely not the film that we get after that 10-minute mark. Um, Another positive I possibly could say about this movie is the attempted, and I want to really emphasize that word, attempted messages about fatherhood, why it's important, why it's, even if you're this incredibly busy businessman, why it's still important to be, the father figure of your children and so forth. And if the mother's passed away, you kind of are both the mother and the father figure for the children. Then, by the time that they have kids and they become parents and so forth, they're out on their own and all this. So there's a few attempts at this of good fatherhood messages. Unfortunately, it's in a really awful script that really has no idea how to handle those messages at all, but it is attempted. Now for negatives of Ghost Dad. This is probably the most inconsistent movie I've ever seen in my life. It's so inconsistent with what Bill Cosby can do as this ghost. There's literally scenes where, like he has like a physical with a doctor, and he can physically go up and touch him and do things that any physical of a normal human being can do and so forth. There's scenes where supposedly Bill Cosby can't stand around in lit areas. He has to be in dark rooms for people to interact and talk with him and to, feel his hands and so forth. But there's scenes where he's at meetings where it's clearly lit rooms like what you're seeing here for this review, and people can interact and talk and touch hands with him and so forth. It is just so inconsistent with what it wants and what it can do and what Bill Cosby can do as this ghost. It is just super inconsistent. Also, another thing about this film, and this is a crime of any comedy movie. It's not funny. There's not a single good joke in this movie. Every joke that is trying to be really funny, really getting you to laugh, it's not funny. There's not a single good joke in this movie. It's not a good movie. There's also a lot of unsolved and confusing story resolutions in this movie. There's so many scenes where things randomly get shoved in your face that get randomly solved, like on the spot, that normally most films would take time to, go to a location, interact with characters, try to figure out a problem and so forth. Ghost Dad is so much in a hurry of getting itself done and being inconsistent with all these ghost rules that it clearly does not want to bother establishing, that it completely rushes through the conflicts and the problems that Bill Cosby and his children face throughout the course of this movie. It is just completely confused with itself. There's also a lot of scenery editing errors in this movie. There's scenes where, like I was saying before, when the cab driver goes crazy and he's taking Bill Cosby with him in this cab, there's one scene where they're literally 1 second into the scene, they're in the city, and then a second later they're out in this desert somewhere with very few buildings and very few homes. It's just like, is this literally the same place that we were just at like 2 seconds ago? The editing in this film makes almost no sense. There's also some really bad acting in this movie. There's scenes where these kids are just trying to be shocked with what the dad can do. There's scenes where the neighbors are shocked that, they think Bill Cosby's this ghost. There's one that even thinks he's an alien. And it's bad. The acting is just really atrociously bad. And unfortunately, in the heat of the night, actor Sidney Poitier directed this movie. And unfortunately, none of his Oscar-worthy acting talent made it into the acting department of this movie, just to show you how bad it is. There's some awful looking special effects in this movie too. This film was made in 1990. It looks awful. Keep in mind, the original Star Wars trilogy was already out by then. Several of Steven Spielberg's big hits were out by then, like the Indiana Jones movies, the first three anyway. The Back to the Future films were out by then. There's no excuse for the special effects to be this awful. People would be like, oh, it's from 1990, you're just being hard on it. No, these special effects suck. They're awful. They are not, it is inexcusable how bad the special effects are in this movie. The third act of this film is also really lazy and convenient. Every possible problem that Bill Cosby's character ran into and other characters run into over the course of this film, we're to the point in the movie where things have to get solved in order for the story to end. It is so lazy and convenient with how everything gets resolved in this movie. The third act is just so convenient with getting everything solved. And there's literally one scene where a major problem of the movie that the character runs into as a conflict, he walks into like one or two different rooms and it's over with. Like the conflict is literally done with. It's solved. And it's just like, where was this, evidence or whatever earlier on in the movie? It's like, how does this make sense? There's also a neighbor character in this film that is, like I said, he thinks Bill Cosby is an alien supposedly. And there's like a 10-minute subplot with this character with, him having to reveal to the press or something that he's a ghost or an alien or whatever this kid thinks he is. And Bill Cosby has to give this kid like clean, fresh bills in the form of $50,000 just so he can like get this money. It's just like, why? Why? He's like 5 years old. What is he going to do with that money? Really? What is he going to do? It's just like, it makes no sense. So Ghost Dad, I'm going to give this film a 1 out of 10. It's not worth your time and money. Like I said, if you're just looking for like the film that you can officially label as one of the worst films ever made, well, Ghost Dad is certainly going to do the trick because it is awful. Like I said, there's almost nothing good about this movie. 1 out of 10. It's just really awful. Never watch a Ghost Dad unless you want to for sure label what is one of the worst films ever made.